Welcome back to another episode of Projecting Grandeur. I am your host, Ron Dichter. I want to talk today about remote work. For those of you that don't know, I have been fairly opposed to remote work, really frankly, all through COVID. I mean, at the time, I had a business in Florida. We were deemed essential services only because we dealt with the transferring of funds for businesses. And I had a fairly full team in the office, right through COVID. And at the time we had just moved into a bigger office, and so we hadn't fully staffed up. So it gave us a little bit of flexibility to spread out, which worked out really well. And then as, COVID started to go on and the concept of remote work, started to evolve, I was adamantly opposed to it. And at the time, the business had, call it roughly 250 employees in it, and there were 3 offices, and there was a constant debate between the exec team around whether we should allow remote work, whether we should hire for remote work, and we were fairly divided. And I was in the camp of we should hire within the office and ask for 5-day work, and in the event we can't find somebody in the local market, that's when we would then look remote. And it would only be after we exhausted, all of our local efforts that we would do that. And again, there was a lot of divide on that. Well, now we're, at the time of this video, we're 5 years, since COVID. This is, the middle of 2025, and COVID's not a thing anymore. I mean, sure, it still exists, but it doesn't exist in the way where, people are thinking about, obviously having spatial separation and an in-office environment. Like, that really doesn't factor in anymore. Now it's just a lifestyle choice. And because we had this time where remote work was so prevalent, a lot of the workforce has become accustomed to be able to work from home. And again, my opinion over time has been in office is the right way. Now, as I have moved on from that business and I'm now into a startup, and I'm in more of a technology-based business where your workforce is a little more specific as to what you're looking for, and you can't always find it right in your local backyard. It's gotten me thinking about whether or not I'm open to the concept of having this business be more either remote or hybrid. I've even looked at maybe full remote and kind of weigh in the options. And many of you may face this same kind of conundrum of, do I want to allow remote work? And again, over the last 5 years, I've been fairly opposed, and my stance hasn't changed around remote work, that in office you will have more productive people than you will remote. And I think that's still true today. However, sometimes you have to think differently to accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish, but more importantly, find the people that you want to find. And as I've started to kind of cast a net out there around some of the really niche roles that I need, whether it's a specific developer that handles a specific language, or whether it is somebody who's in a vertical and that vertical may not have a long history in one of the geographic areas that I'm operating in, like it's gotten me thinking about what would remote look like. And to be perfectly frank, I've even looked at my own life in that, I'm a full-time Florida resident and I spend most of my time in Florida, but I also spend a good chunk of time on the road and in other places. And so for me, as I look at my own life, maybe I need to have some flexibility as well so that I don't have to be in office full-time. And if I'm of the kind of mindset that as the executive, that you don't do as I say, you do as I do. And so if I'm going to make the stance that we are only going to be an in-office company, well, then it would be fairly hypocritical of me to say I'm not going to follow this, but this is just for my team. So I've kind of really started rethinking, what could remote work look like? Could it work? There's been so many tools that have come out since COVID and have been enhanced since COVID to really help employers manage a remote workforce. Like, could this work for me? And I'm kind of in this thought process right now that, okay, what would the business look like as remote, and what would the business look like as in office. There's zero interest in hybrid. I don't understand hybrid, because if you're going to do hybrid, why not just do remote? And if you're going to do hybrid, why not just do in office? Why have this flexibility? You're better off having flexibility within the actual role itself rather than as a decision, because I don't understand hybrid work. And so I am not debating a hybrid work environment. I am debating either full remote, or I'm debating on full in office. Now, let's weigh some pros and cons that I'm going through myself, because many of you might be thinking the same thing. So the obvious ones: if I go remote, I'm going to save money on office. I'm going to save money on infrastructure. I'm going to save money on internet. Like, there's so many intangibles that I don't actually think about when you think of what an employee takes on when they take on remote, right? It's their internet service. So now I'm saving, $1,000 a month on a, dedicated, internet and backup internet. I'm saving on, the office itself, which is not inexpensive, and the faster you grow, the more space you need. I'm saving on the upkeep. But the really interesting one that I found is the IT management. So there's an interesting shift that happens when you hire somebody who's remote. They are expected to deal with their own IT related issues. Meaning, if they can't get on the internet, that's their problem, and they need to figure it out. If they are unable to, restart their computer, or there's a problem, unless you're providing the hardware, which is interesting because a lot of remote employees are perfectly good using their own devices as well, because a lot of the systems, are cloud-based at this point, so you just need access to the internet. And so you end up not needing, the same level of IT support that you would need as in office. The network's down, or, you got to restart the router, or something wrong with the Wi-Fi. Like, all that goes away with remote work. Now, it is harder, I believe, to manage a remote workforce, especially if you talk about some of the more entry-level roles in sales, the entry-level roles in customer support, because unless you have quantifiable metrics that you can clearly measure, it's not as clear-cut as to how to manage and measure what they're actually doing. But again, there are tools in place that help do that. The one thing, though, that I think you genuinely lose, actually two things that you genuinely lose when you move to a remote environment, is one, the camaraderie, the team building. Like, it's not the same. And yes, you can do things via video, you can do things in kind of structured events, but what you can't do is have water cooler chat. You can't have office interaction and banter the same way you do as an in-office environment. And I think that makes it challenging to build that same sort of culture. And then the other thing is it's hard to have just a quick conversation with somebody. Inevitably, when you work remote, you can certainly push the video button and see if somebody's available, but if they're not, you can't just see if they're available. You have to keep trying them, or worse, you have to schedule time on their calendar. Now all of a sudden you have a 15 or a 30-minute meeting for what might have taken 30 seconds or 2 minutes to talk about. So again, I'm not an expert in this area, and I know there's tons of HR people that have done extensive research on this. I'm only telling you from my firsthand point of view what I am going through, and I am actually in the throes of this debate on whether or not I should make my company full remote, full in office. And I don't know the answer to the question right now. So as I start to work through this on my own, I will share what I'm experiencing. I will share what my results are. But right now, I am dead center. Like, one day I wake up and I think remote, one day I wake up and I think in office, and I vacillate tremendously. And so until I have strong conviction, I'm just going to keep doing what I am doing, which is what I said I don't want to do, which is I have some people in office and some people that are remote. So we'll see how this all plays out. I'll keep y'all posted as I go through my debate, and good luck to you as you start to evaluate it as well. Thanks for tuning in today. Sorry I don't have any clear, very specific guidance, but sometimes I just want to share what I'm dealing with, because it might be very similar to what many of you are dealing with. So I hope you find this helpful. Please remember to like and comment. Don't forget to share. Got to get the word out there, folks. We're helping the business world, the entrepreneurial world, the career-changing world become better. Have a good day.